I'm Joya DeVita with Real Chicago, and I'm here with Tim Miller, the director and producer of the new film Ghostwriter, as well as Jim Lynch, the writer of Ghostwriter.
Hi, I'm Tim Miller. I'm the director and producer of Ghostwriter.
And I'm Jim Lynch. I'm the screenwriter for Ghostwriter.
So what made you decide to do the film in black and white?
First time I read it, actually, in the play form that Jim was saying, I saw it that way. It's not something. I mean, that's something I've rarely done when I've read plays, and I just started picturing that. I started thinking of these, creatures of the night, and a writer that's toiling away, in like pools of light. I think there was noir imagery that kind of came to me, and thinking about ghosts, and there's ghosts on the page, and ghosts of the people who had passed on, and ghosts of the people that these guys used to be, and some of that came to me, and there was just I don't know. I think there was some nostalgia too, just because of I came up in the theater community as a young actor here in Chicago, and I think there's a lot in there that kind of connected to me personally, and I just felt I kind of want to get a snapshot of that, a moment of time, and to some of the, like Thomas and his mother in their world, and the world that they interact, and these characters and the journey they go through. There's kind of like this, this old world that was, being replaced by the new, and there's a lot of analog and the digital, and there's a lot of stuff in there that it just felt right, and and it's this real small, intimate piece too, and I just felt that that was just a perfect way to capture that and be tighter focus on the characters and their surroundings.
And Sang-hoon really sent a second-gear emotion on that too, I think, Tim.
Oh yeah, and and then once you kind of got into that, there's a lot going around with that. I think at that time too, there was some films, and Ida and Roma. I think around the time that was probably swirling around my head, and also just some what Jim wrote. There's little snippets that remind me of Marty or Down by Law in a couple of places that were, I felt that. But once we started going on that, and I was kind of getting behind that idea too. I think just because of where we were with working on a real tight budget and everything too, it just seemed to be a good thing as well, just for matching wardrobe and exteriors and set design and things like that. And we just knew that we were going to be cooking fast, in 11 days. So all of it kind of came together in that way, and it just kind of stuck. So
the entire film is set and produced in Chicago, with what appears to be a completely local cast. How important was it for you to set and shoot the film in Chicago? Did you film during the pandemic? If yes, what difficulties did you run into during filming, if any?
We actually shot it in 11 days in February. So we got shut down right after we were done. So that part, and thankfully, no one got sick that was there. Obviously we didn't know it was headed our way, but I'm sure stuff was floating around at some point. But and the story was definitely set always in Chicago. So it was always the idea of doing that. And frankly, there's so many amazing people in this city that on camera and obviously in theater as well, that we wanted to keep that all together. And personally, I just felt that for what we were trying to accomplish in the time and what we could do, and I just felt like casting a lot of Chicago theater actors was something that I was going to try to lean towards, if possible, for every role, just because I know the ability to focus and do so quickly what we had. I mean, we were able to rehearse and get together at times for a little bit before we started shooting, but when we got out there, I mean, as Jim can attest to, he was there. It's it's probably like 3 or 4 times. You had to find it. And so people were really focused. I just felt, I mean, every actor is different, but I just felt, just knowing that the people that I was familiar with in the theater, especially, that ready to kind of step up and do that and nail it, and especially in the kind of style that I was after too. I mean, I really was interested in having these static shots, long takes, leaning on a master, and then having maybe one or two different, views into the scene. And so it fit with the time that we're trying to press onto, but also there were a lot of pressure on the actors to try to find that and knowing that we were going to move on. So that was certainly a big deal too.
The actors had to understand very intimately who their character was, because they had to find it. They had to find it like by the second take, or we weren't, or they weren't going to,
Yeah, and we also tried to we had a theater space or a rehearsal room that we read for a little bit and just kind of mapped out, because early on when Jim and I were working on it, it's like we knew the house we were going to get. We didn't, in the crafting of the script, it's like when we knew we could get this house, I think we started to like pack more stuff into the story that could happen in the house, just knowing that we could trust, Jim Ryan, who was a family friend of Jim's down the street and growing up, and make more things happen there. And then as a result of that, then we could take that back to the actors and kind of map it out on the floor, saying like, this is what you got to work with. Basically, these are the places we're going to be, and as best as could give them the idea so they could move their bodies a bit, kind of
pictures of the house, right?
Yeah, and we kind of talk about it, hashed out their scenes a little bit, but just give them an idea of how things are going to flow, where we know they could probably move, and obviously when we set the camera up, that we had little scribbles here and there, sometimes of a picture of like what we might want to go after, storyboard, like a few of them, and then but most times it's kind of Sang-Hoon would move stuff around, get it set, and it might be different, but at least they knew it's like you're going to be at the table, you're going to be around us, you're going to have access to the kitchen, all those kinds of things, and that really helped them out a lot, I think, too, just kind of get in the flow and nail it quick and find something.
Can you tell us more about the cinematographer and also how to say his name, because I do not want to insult him? Can you please explain how he became part of the project?
Sure. Sang-Hoon Lee is his name. He's he is from Seoul in South Korea, and he came over here, I believe, in the late '90s to go to the Art Institute school, and he was a cinematographer. He's directed. He's been a professor over here. He actually just moved recently down and took a professor job down at the University of Georgia. And he and I met actually at a film festival. I had done a short film, directed my first short film called Tightheads, and it was paired with Sang-Hoon's feature film. And this was at the Lighthouse Film Festival in New Jersey. And so it was pretty cool that we got paired up for a night on the weekend at the festival, and then we did like a Q&A after it, and then at one of the parties just started talking, and being both from Chicago, and I just said we keep in touch, and then when I started thinking again about this, but Jim's play and turning into film, and once we started rolling on it, and especially too, because I like to say about thinking about black and white, that I knew his work. I'd always been thinking about Sang-Hoon, but he also had shot, I believe, 4 feature films in black and white prior to this one, and I just really trusted that what he saw and what he could bring to it, and feeling really comfortable in that environment. So it was he's terrific. He's a great guy, and it was really awesome to be able to meet him at the festival and then reconnect and do this.
Very, very impressive demeanor on a set. I mean, just very impressive. Yeah. Like he's such a cool customer.
Yeah.
We're doing this on a shoestring. Got to get it in just a couple of takes. That might be frustrating to a lot of DPs, and he was just as cool as could be.
Totally. Yeah. Exactly. It was, and he's done a lot of documentaries and stuff too. So I think he's used to that, moving fast and making his decisions and just kind of keeping it even like that. But it was great. He was terrific.
Wow, it really sounds like he was a perfect fit for the project. I had read that the script was inspired by David Lawrence Hamilton, How much of himself was written into the script and how much of his character is fictional? Can you say?
Yeah, I can, mostly because David is actually not affected like that. He's actually a much cooler customer than he doesn't have the kind of agonies that his character has to suffer through and learn to endure. But I also think he understands them and knows a lot of people that do suffer that way, so he can play the role. But I don't think that's who he is. He doesn't have that kind of angst, you know. But he's one of those actors also that's every character is a version of himself anyway. So, which is what I expected, you know.
I was just going to say that, yeah, that during shooting too, I mean, and there were some times when he had just mentioned of some other folks that he had, served with, and
Yeah.
stories he had heard and things that he kind of was an amalgam of some of those feelings and putting them all together.
Can you tell me, was it his idea? Did he already have an outline or a draft, or did he just inspire the story?
I just kind of took that line and then actually wrote a play about it. And so what Tim read was a play. And we decided to adapt the play. And, we weren't sure at first. There was a couple of fits and starts in the beginning, like, should we do this? Are we going to do this? Is this the right project? And eventually we came to it. So the characters are pretty realized in the play. We just had to convert the entire thing to a movie, but the movie is pretty different. The movie is pretty different than the play, but the emotional journey, I think, is similar, very similar.
You had mentioned that the script was originally written as a play. What made you decide to make it into a film instead?
When Tim asked me to. Literally. Yeah. And I had a theater director in town critique the play, and one of his big critiques was that it was more cinematic than theatrical, though, which is kind of funny,
I feel like that's a compliment.
Yeah, not to a theater person necessarily.
Right. I absolutely love the harp music that was woven through the film, right in the middle of the film. It really added a level of ethereal magic. Whose decision was it to include the harp? Did you already know the harpist? Did you audition harpists? How did that come about?
I think that was Tim. So he should.
Yeah, we were. It was kind of where we started building around this this idea of Thomas having his little world that he was operating out of from the Shawnee, the group, the writing group. It was also a place where there's other community classes and stuff, and that's so we have like this other Irish instruments and things. So we kind of came upon that, and it's he's the blind harpist that was that from Ireland, that was from Navan and County Meath, and it was that piece I had found when I was looking around online for it, but it was interesting because that he had written a piece too that was connected to that whole thing that became like the Stairway to Heaven and the other band from England, and I can't recall now. This is my train wreck here, but anyways, they were that piece was it was just so beautiful, and
when you hear it, it's ethereal without being fairy-like. You know what I mean? It's ethereal, but it's also wistful. That's why it worked for us. You know what I mean? Because it gives it a magical realism, but it's also there. It has that tone in the movie that we have, which I think is tinged with wistfulness. You know what I mean? And a little bit of melancholy at all times. Which is sort of the mood of our film, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, and she was terrific, and they were great, and just like within you had like 2 or 3 times to try to do it and capture the sound, and that's what we ended up using in the end. Was exactly what we caught in the room there.
And that was a start of a really long day. You got her early, and that was a long, tough day of shooting in Evanston there, and Tim, if you recall.
Yeah.
ended up on the train, I think, late, right?
Yeah.
That's wonderful, because I have to tell you, it was so worth it. I just love the harvest in your film. It was so beautiful.
Thank you.
You have a really impressive and talented, diverse cast. Did you purposefully intend to lean into diversity, or did the casting come together organically?
Yeah, it just came together, organically. We had essentially, I didn't have a casting director. I went directly to some agencies and asked, for some people to read, for a few parts. I mean, we knew early on, obviously we've been talking about David, that was going that way. And there were two people that Marianne Thebus, who plays Mary the mother, and Peter DeFaria and Thomas, were people that were in my mind for a long time. But the rest was just kind of open and seeing, what we could find. There was a couple other people too that we were interested in, but it was certainly just trying to find a good mix of people.
I think a good example is, though, that like we wanted to get the best people, but we were set on keeping an open mind about it. Melissa Dupre plays the bartender, for instance. Yeah. That was written as a man, and then when we saw her audition, we cast somebody else in the role she auditioned for, but we liked her so much, so we just flipped the gender of the role. And it's actually, I had just heard a podcast with Gina Davis. She had said if more filmmakers would just keep their mind open about a lot of these roles that don't have to be a man. So I just remembered that, and I'm like, why don't we cast her and just make her Danielle instead of Dennis? That kind of a thing.
Jim, tell me about putting your family members and yourself in the film. How did that work out for you? And do they have any interest in participating in future projects?
My family members, like my daughter and nephew and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And myself, that was a totally expediency of and a real I assume a pretty common thing in this kind of filmmaking. Like, hey, Mike Q, how about you be Mike Q today? Okay, I can be Mike Q. You know what I mean? And Mike Q, the way he used to be a bigger character in other drafts, and he always seemed a little like me anyway. You know what I mean? In the way that he was.
Oh, totally.
You know what I mean? So it was like he was me anyway, a little bit. So it made it kind of easy. My kids were, and my nephew were thrilled to have an opportunity to be in it in some way. I think it's my daughter's. That we filmed her hand, I think.
Did that work out well for you? Was it more of a challenge, or how was that for you?
That part of it, that was fine. You know what I mean? Like, I felt a little at sea with people that have been acting a lot more than me. We did some improvising, and I was pushing it out there pretty hard. You know what I mean? I was slicing off some pretty good hunks of ham, I think, compared to the other people. But I mean, that, like you say, there's editing, Joya. You know what I mean? So it was okay.
So were they all bitten by the show business bug? Do they want to do future projects?
I think my nephew, Lincoln, his mom was doing the social media for the movie now. I think he wouldn't mind. Yeah, he's kind of got a natural ham to him. I have a son who's in high school, and he's big into theater at his school, and he's the one that's not in it. So it's just funny. Yeah.
So what's next for you two? Do you have any plans for future projects together? What are each of you working on right now? And what can we expect to see from you two in the future?
I think it's fair to say that we'll always have at least one shared project for the foreseeable future. And right? Wouldn't you say, Tim? At least one.
Oh, yeah.
Times. Yeah. We have a period Chicago piece we're working on right now that we think is really exciting. That's drawing on my background as a criminal prosecutor in Chicago. We're writing a criminal justice feature right now. We're already into drafts on it, so pretty happy about it so far.
Yeah, I'm just I'm enjoying working with Jim on a couple script ideas, and it's right now I'm just I'm kind of going back and thinking what I might want to do next. I don't have anything plan at this point. It was kind of a journey to get it through the pandemic and, doing the Zooms and editing and everything else, the sound design. And so I've just kind of want to decompress a bit and then think about it. But the draft that Jim's talking about has been pretty exciting to be a part of. So looking forward to working more on that this fall.
Well, that is excellent. Thank you guys so much for talking to me today about your new project.
Thank you.
Do you have any plans for any other festivals?
We're sending it out there on the circuit. We'll see. There's some submissions at this point.
Well, thank you guys so much once again for speaking with me today. We wish you all the luck and success in the world, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future regarding that project that you mentioned earlier. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks,
You
Joya.
too. Thank you.